Listen carefully, because what you're about to hear may completely change the way you understand revenge. Everyone is shocked because they expected anger, destruction, and retaliation. But they never expected someone to turn pain into power. They thought your enemies had the upper hand. They thought their betrayal would break you, their lies would ruin your name, and their cruelty would leave you defeated. But something changed. Instead of becoming consumed by their behavior, you became stronger. Instead of chasing them for answers, you walked away. Instead of fighting every battle, you learned which battles were beneath you. And now the very people who once laughed at your struggles are watching in disbelief as your life begins to speak for itself. This is not about becoming cruel or hurting anyone. This is about discovering the kind of strength that makes retaliation unnecessary. Sometimes the most brutal consequence for those who tried to destroy you is simply watching you rise without them. They wanted your attention, but you gave them silence. They wanted your downfall, but you gave yourself discipline. They expected revenge fueled by rage, but what they witnessed was something far more powerful: transformation. Your greatest response is becoming so focused, so peaceful, and so successful that their actions no longer have control over your emotions. And when everyone finally asks, how did they survive all of that and still become this strong? The answer will be simple. They stopped fighting to prove themselves and started living to fulfill their purpose. Today, remember this: your comeback does not need to be loud to be powerful. Your victory does not need revenge to be real. Sometimes the person they tried hardest to break becomes the very person they can no longer recognize, and that is when the shock begins. The revenge they never saw coming. There is a kind of revenge that does not involve shouting, fighting, threatening, or destroying another person. It is the kind of revenge that happens quietly, so quietly that your enemies may not even realize it is happening until the results are impossible to ignore. They thought they knew exactly what your future would look like. They looked at your difficult season and assumed it was your permanent condition. They saw your tears and called you weak. They saw your silence and called you powerless. They watched you walk away and convinced themselves that you had surrendered. But what they failed to understand was that you were not surrendering. You were preparing. Sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do after being betrayed is become completely committed to rebuilding yourself. You stop explaining. You stop arguing. You stop trying to convince people of your worth. You begin investing your energy into the person you are becoming, and suddenly the story they created about you starts falling apart. They expected you to react emotionally because they understood the version of you that was hurting. They knew how to provoke you, how to push your buttons, and how to make you question yourself. But they never prepared for the version of you that learned self-control. They never imagined that the pain they caused would become the motivation that pushed you towards something greater. Every disappointment taught you something. Every betrayal showed you something. Every rejection forced you to discover something about yourself that comfort never could. You began realizing that not everyone deserves access to your heart, your plans, your time, or your energy. You stopped giving explanations to people committed to misunderstanding you. You stopped chasing people who were comfortable losing you. And slowly, without making an announcement, you changed. That change became your greatest response. You did not need to stand in front of your enemies and announce that you were coming back. You simply came back stronger. You did not need to tell them that they had underestimated you. Your progress told them. You did not need to remind them of every cruel word they spoke. Your transformation became the evidence that their words never had the final authority over your life. There is something incredibly powerful about becoming successful without carrying hatred in your heart. It means you refuse to let the people who hurt you control the person you become. They may have influenced your pain, but they do not get to design your future. And this is where the real shock begins. The people who expected you to remain stuck suddenly see you moving forward. The person they thought would always need their approval no longer cares what they think. The person they believed they could manipulate now has boundaries. The person they dismissed now carries confidence. The person they laughed at now walks with purpose. They begin asking questions. What happened to them? Why don't they react anymore? How did they become so strong? The answer is simple. You finally understood that your energy was too valuable to waste on proving yourself to people who had already decided to misunderstand you. Your silence became discipline. Your disappointment became wisdom. Your rejection became redirection. Your loneliness became an opportunity to discover yourself. Your pain became a teacher. and your comeback became something nobody could take away from you. This is why you should never underestimate the power of someone who has finally stopped seeking validation. When you no longer need people to recognize your value, you become incredibly difficult to control. When you no longer need an apology to move forward, you become free. When you stop waiting for someone to admit they were wrong, you reclaim your power. So if someone betrayed you, underestimated you, rejected you, or tried to make you feel insignificant, do not allow their behavior to convince you that your story is finished. Your greatest response may simply be to continue. Wake up, work on yourself, protect your peace, build your future, strengthen your character, become wiser without becoming bitter, become stronger without becoming cruel. Let the person you become be the answer to everything they once said you could never be. Because one day, they may look at your life and realize that the person they tried to break did not become destroyed. They became transformed. And that is the revenge they never saw coming. You became everything they never believed you could be, and you did it without becoming anything like them. You didn't fight back. You leveled up. There comes a moment in life when you finally realize that not every battle deserves your participation. Some people want you angry because anger makes you predictable. They provoke you because they want you to react. They spread rumors because they want you distracted. They disrespect you because they want you to lose control. They expect you to chase explanations, defend your name, and spend your precious energy proving that you are not the person they claimed you were. But what happens when you refuse to play their game? What happens when you stop fighting for approval and start fighting for your future? That is when everything changes, because the most powerful response to people who underestimated you is not always confrontation. Sometimes it is elevation. Sometimes the strongest statement you can make is to become so focused on your growth that the people who once consumed your thoughts become completely irrelevant to your journey. They expected you to respond with the same negativity they gave you. They expected anger, they expected revenge, they expected you to lose sleep thinking about what they said and what they did. But instead you started rebuilding, quietly, patiently, deliberately. You began working on your mind, your character, your goals, your discipline, and your future. While they were watching your old life, you were building a new one. While they were discussing your failures, you were learning from them. While they were waiting for you to fall apart, you were putting yourself back together piece by piece. And the beautiful part is that you did not need to announce your transformation. Real growth rarely needs an announcement. Eventually, people notice. They notice when your confidence changes. They notice when you stop seeking their approval. They notice when you no longer react to every insult. They notice when your priorities become different. They notice when you walk into a room with peace instead of insecurity. They notice when you stop explaining every decision. They notice when your life begins moving in a direction they never expected. And suddenly, the person they thought they understood becomes a mystery to them. They cannot figure out why their words no longer hurt you. They cannot understand why their absence no longer controls your emotions. They cannot understand why you seem happier without the people who once convinced you that you needed them. That is what leveling up really means. It does not mean becoming arrogant. It does not mean pretending you never cared. It does not mean becoming cold or cruel. It means developing enough wisdom to understand that your future deserves more attention than your past. You can acknowledge what happened without allowing it to define you. You can remember the betrayal without living inside it. You can recognize who hurt you without carrying hatred everywhere you go. Your goal is not to become heartless. Your goal is to become healthy in your boundaries, powerful in your mindset, and disciplined in your direction. Think about how much energy you once spent wondering why someone treated you badly. Think about how many nights you replayed conversations, questioning what you could have done differently. Think about how often you tried to understand people who had no intention of understanding you. Now imagine taking all of that energy and investing it into yourself. Imagine using that energy to learn something new, build something meaningful, strengthen your faith, improve your habits, pursue your dreams, and create a future that makes your past look completely different. That is what happens when pain becomes fuel instead of a prison. Your enemies may have expected you to remain the person they could easily provoke, but they underestimated what adversity could teach you. They did not know that every difficult experience was developing your patience. They did not know that every rejection was strengthening your independence. They did not know that every betrayal was teaching you discernment. They did not know that every disappointment was preparing you to stop accepting less than you deserve. They thought they were taking something away from you, but unknowingly, they were helping you discover what you were capable of becoming. So do not waste your comeback trying to make somebody else miserable. Build something so meaningful that misery is no longer part of your identity. Let your progress speak. Let your discipline speak. Let your peace speak. Let your character speak. The day will come when the people who expected you to collapse realize you did not collapse. You evolved. You became more selective with your energy, more intentional with your time, and more serious about your purpose. You stopped begging people to see your worth because you finally saw it yourself. And that is the moment your entire story changes. You no longer need to defeat your enemies because you have defeated the version of yourself that believed their opinions determined your value. You have leveled up. You have outgrown the arguments, the drama, the manipulation, and the endless need to prove yourself. Your victory is not that they suffer. Your victory is that you are free. Your victory is that you kept your heart while strengthening your boundaries. Your victory is that you turned a painful chapter into preparation for a powerful future. And when they finally look at you and wonder how you became so different, let your life answer the question. You stopped fighting them and started building yourself. Their own actions became their consequences. There is a moment when you finally understand that you do not have to punish everyone who hurt you, because life has a way of revealing the truth through consequences. People often believe they can say anything, do anything, betray anyone, and walk away without consequences. They become comfortable with manipulation because they have escaped accountability before. They tell lies and assume the lies will survive forever. They hurt people and convince themselves that the pain will eventually disappear. They create confusion and then pretend they had nothing to do with it. But what they fail to understand is that actions carry weight. Every decision creates a direction, every habit creates a pattern, and every pattern eventually creates a result. You may not see the consequences immediately, but that does not mean they are not coming. There was a time when you probably wanted to confront everything. You wanted answers. You wanted people to admit what they had done. You wanted the truth to come out immediately, so everyone could finally understand your side of the story. But then something changed inside you. You realized that constantly trying to expose people was keeping you emotionally connected to the very situation you were trying to escape. You realized that you could spend years trying to convince people who were committed to misunderstanding you. And eventually, you made a powerful decision. You would stop carrying the responsibility of making everyone see the truth. You would let time reveal what arguments never could. That decision was not weakness, it was wisdom. There is tremendous strength in refusing to chase people for accountability. You can tell the truth without becoming obsessed with proving it. You can establish boundaries without creating revenge plans. You can walk away without announcing your departure. You can forgive without reopening the door. Most importantly, you can trust that people's repeated choices eventually reveal their character. Someone can pretend for a day, a month, or even years, but patterns are difficult to hide forever. Eventually, contradictions appear. Eventually, people notice. Eventually, the behavior that they used against you becomes the very behavior that damages their own relationships. Think about someone who constantly lies. Eventually, people stop trusting them. Someone who manipulates everyone eventually finds themselves surrounded by people who are afraid to trust them. Someone who constantly creates conflict eventually becomes exhausted by the chaos they created. Someone who treats good people as disposable eventually discovers that genuine people are not always waiting around. This is not about wishing suffering upon anyone. It is about understanding that life naturally responds to repeated choices. You do not need to push the dominoes over yourself. Sometimes you simply need to step aside and allow people to experience the direction they have chosen. And while their choices are producing consequences, your choices can produce something completely different. You can choose peace instead of revenge, discipline instead of destruction, growth instead of bitterness, wisdom instead of impulsive reactions. You can decide that their behavior will not determine your character. That is one of the greatest victories you can achieve. Because if someone hurts you and you become exactly like them, they have influenced you more than you realize. But if they hurt you and you become wiser, stronger, kinder, and more discerning, then their actions did not destroy your identity. They became part of the lesson that strengthened it. One day, people may begin noticing the difference. They may discover that the stories told about you were incomplete. They may realize that the person they were warned about was not who they were told you were. They may notice that the person who was accused of causing problems was actually the person trying to escape them. And when the truth finally becomes visible, you will not need to celebrate someone's downfall. You will simply continue walking forward. That is the beauty of being vindicated without becoming obsessed with vindication. Never underestimate what happens when you stop trying to control the outcome. Some situations become clearer with time. Some people expose themselves through their own behavior. Some lies collapse because maintaining them requires too much effort. Some relationships disappear because they were built on manipulation instead of honesty. And sometimes the greatest evidence that you made the right decision is the peace you feel after leaving the situation behind. So if someone has betrayed you, lied about you, rejected you, or deliberately tried to damage your reputation, do not let their behavior drag you into a cycle of hatred. Protect yourself, speak when necessary, set boundaries, walk away when appropriate. Keep building your life. You do not need to become cruel to become powerful. You do not need to destroy someone to prove that they were wrong. Let your consistency become your testimony. Let your character become your defense. Let your future become the evidence, because eventually, people have to live with the results of who they repeatedly choose to be. And while they are facing the consequences of their choices, you can be experiencing the rewards of yours. You chose growth, you chose peace, you chose discipline, you chose to keep moving. And that is why the ultimate response is not watching someone fall. It is realizing that you no longer need to watch them at all. Your life has become too valuable, your purpose too important, and your future too powerful to keep looking backward. The moment everyone realizes they misjudged you. There is a moment in every powerful comeback when the people who once looked down on you suddenly become silent. They remember the words they spoke, the way they treated you, the assumptions they made, and the confidence they had that you would never rise above the version of yourself they had already judged. They thought they had you figured out. They looked at one difficult chapter and decided they knew the entire story. They saw your struggle and mistook it for your identity. They saw your patience and called it weakness. They saw you walking away from unnecessary conflict and assumed you were afraid. They never considered that you might simply be choosing a different battlefield. But now, something is changing. You are becoming the person they never expected to meet, and the realization is uncomfortable, because it forces them to confront how badly they misjudged you. People often judge others according to what they can see in the present. They do not see the private battles, the sleepless nights, the lessons learned through disappointment, or the countless moments when you had every reason to quit but decided to keep going. They see the results without understanding the process. They see confidence without seeing the insecurity you had to overcome. They see strength without knowing how much pain taught you endurance. They see success without knowing how many failures trained you to become more disciplined. That is why you should never allow someone's temporary opinion of you to become your permanent opinion of yourself. There was a time when their judgment probably hurt. Maybe you wondered why they could not see your intentions. Maybe you tried to explain yourself repeatedly because you wanted them to understand that you were not the person they claimed you were. But eventually, you discovered something liberating. You do not have to convince everyone. Some people will only understand your value after they witness what happens when you stop giving them access to you. Your absence can reveal your importance. Your boundaries can reveal your strength. Your progress can reveal the mistake they made when they underestimated you. And now you are moving differently. You no longer feel the need to announce every goal. You no longer need everyone to applaud your decisions. You are becoming comfortable with working in silence. You are learning to protect unfinished dreams from people who only know how to criticize them. You are understanding that not every opinion deserves a response. Not every accusation deserves an explanation. Not every person deserves another opportunity to disturb your peace. This is not arrogance. This is maturity. Imagine the surprise on the faces of people who expected you to remain stuck. They thought the rejection would permanently damage your confidence. Instead, it pushed you toward self-discovery. They thought betrayal would make you afraid to trust yourself. Instead, it taught you discernment. They thought isolation would destroy you. Instead, it gave you space to hear your own thoughts. They thought failure had ended your journey. Instead, it taught you how to rebuild with better foundations. Every chapter they thought would destroy you became part of the education that prepared you for your next chapter. This is why your comeback does not need to be loud. You do not have to publicly announce that you are proving people wrong. Simply live. Keep improving. Keep learning. Keep becoming. Let your consistency speak louder than your anger. Let your results speak louder than their accusations. Let your character speak louder than rumors. When people eventually realize that they were wrong about you, you will not need to stand there demanding an apology. You may simply smile and continue walking because you have already moved beyond the need for their approval. There is something incredibly powerful about being underestimated. It gives you room to grow without unnecessary attention. While people are busy discussing what they think you cannot accomplish, you can quietly develop the skills, habits, relationships, discipline, and mindset required to accomplish it. Their doubt can become background noise, while your determination becomes the soundtrack of your life. And when the results finally appear, nobody can argue with what is visible. But remember this: do not build your future only to make your enemies regret their decisions. Build it because you deserve the life you are working toward. Build because your purpose is bigger than their opinions. Build because your peace matters. Build because you have dreams that existed before their judgment and will continue long after their names disappear from your story. Your success should not be a weapon. It should be freedom. One day, the same people who once dismissed you may look at you differently. Some may become curious. Some may become respectful. Some may pretend they always believed in you. Others may never admit they were wrong. It does not matter. You do not need their affection to validate your transformation. You know what you survived. You know how hard you worked. You know how many times you had to encourage yourself when nobody else did. So let them be shocked. Let them wonder. Let them question how you became so different. Let them realize that the person they thought they could define was never limited by their imagination. You were growing when they thought you were falling. You were learning when they thought you were losing. You were rebuilding when they thought you were finished. And now the greatest proof that they misjudged you is not revenge, anger, or confrontation. It is the peace in your eyes, the strength in your character, and the direction of your life. They judged your chapter, but they never knew the author of your story, and your best pages are still being written. The ultimate revenge is becoming untouchable. There comes a point in your journey when you stop asking, "How can I get back at the people who hurt me?" and start asking, "How can I become so strong that what they did no longer controls me?" That is the moment everything changes, because the greatest revenge is not destruction. It is freedom. It is waking up one morning and realizing that the people who once occupied your thoughts no longer have access to your peace. It is looking back at the situation that once made you cry and discovering that it no longer has the power to break your spirit. It is becoming so grounded in who you are that another person's rejection cannot make you feel worthless. Their betrayal cannot make you hate yourself. And their opinion cannot determine your direction. That is what it means to become untouchable. Not physically unreachable, but emotionally and mentally free. There was a time when their words probably followed you everywhere. You replayed conversations in your head. You wondered why they treated you differently. You questioned whether you had done something wrong. You imagined what you could have said differently. You wanted them to understand your side. You wanted them to regret hurting you. You wanted justice, recognition, and perhaps an apology. But eventually, you discovered something far more valuable than an apology: peace. You realized that waiting for another person to acknowledge your worth was keeping you emotionally connected to them. So you stopped waiting. You stopped chasing. You stopped explaining. You began choosing yourself. That decision created a different kind of strength. You learned that boundaries are not cruelty. Distance is not hatred. Silence is not weakness. Sometimes walking away is the most courageous thing you can do. You can love people and still recognize that they are not healthy for your future. You can forgive someone and still refuse to give them the same access to your life. You can release anger without pretending the damage never happened. You can wish someone well while choosing to continue your journey without them. That is maturity. That is emotional strength. That is becoming untouchable. And when you become untouchable, people notice. They notice because the tactics that once worked no longer work. The criticism that once ruined your day becomes background noise. The gossip that once made you anxious no longer controls your emotions. The rejection that once made you question yourself becomes a reminder that not every closed door was meant to remain open. The betrayal that once shattered your trust becomes a lesson that teaches you how to recognize genuine character. You stop responding from wounds and start responding from wisdom. But becoming untouchable does not mean becoming cold. That distinction matters. You do not have to destroy your heart just because someone mishandled it. You do not have to become suspicious of everyone because one person betrayed you. You do not have to become cruel because someone was cruel to you. Your strength is not proven by how much pain you can cause. Your strength is proven by how much pain you can experience without allowing it to corrupt your character. You can become wiser without becoming bitter. You can become cautious without becoming fearful. You can become powerful without becoming cruel. Imagine the freedom of no longer needing to prove anyone wrong. Imagine building a beautiful life without checking whether the people who doubted you are watching. Imagine achieving your goals without wondering whether your enemies are jealous. Imagine waking up and realizing that your happiness is no longer connected to their unhappiness. That is true victory, because if your success only matters when someone else sees it, then they still have power over you. But when you succeed simply because you love the person you are becoming, you have finally taken that power back. Your greatest revenge is becoming so focused on your purpose that distractions cannot pull you backward. Build your mind, strengthen your discipline, protect your peace, improve your habits, surround yourself with people who respect your growth, learn from your mistakes. Take care of the future you are creating. Stop giving unlimited access to people who repeatedly demonstrate that they cannot handle your trust. Your energy is precious, and every day you spend obsessing over someone who hurt you is a day you could have spent building something extraordinary. One day, you may look back and realize that the person you thought was your greatest enemy actually became part of your greatest transformation. Not because what they did was right, but because you refused to let it be the end of your story. Their actions became a chapter, not the entire book. Their rejection became redirection. Their betrayal became discernment. Their disrespect became motivation to respect yourself more deeply. Their attempt to diminish you became the reason you finally discovered how much strength was already inside you. So let them talk. Let them misunderstand you. Let them remember the old version of you if they want. You are not required to return to who you were simply because someone else is more comfortable with that version. Keep moving. Keep growing. Keep becoming. The goal is not to make your enemies afraid of you. The goal is to become so secure in yourself that you no longer need to fear them. And when that day arrives, you will understand the deepest meaning of revenge. You will realize that you did not win because someone else lost. You won because you found yourself. You won because you protected your peace. You won because you refused to become what hurt you. You won because you transformed pain into wisdom and disappointment into strength. And the people who once believed they could control your story will eventually discover that they never had the final word. The ultimate revenge is not destroying the people who tried to break you. It is becoming so whole, so peaceful, and so powerful that they can no longer reach the person you have become.